Hi there and welcome to Network News, your regular update from Real Agenda Radio. I'm Tom Burgess and thanks very much for joining us today. Now in today's show you're going to hear updates from UK organisations seeking to bring positive change. So here are some of this week's headlines. We hear some views on money from John Caudwell, the Phones for You founder. And we look ahead to a new podcast episode on taxing wealth featuring James Perry of the Patriotic Millionaires. And just a quick mention about the Compassion Coalition, which is currently being planned. Also, how can we win as one? And that's the name of a new campaign from Compass. And there's a new guide out about not being them and us, and it's from the group called Larger Us. And finally, a bit of extras, a Facebook post, a copy of a Facebook post about why is it that energy profits are so high, the company bosses pays are so high, and that millions are having difficulty paying their energy bills as well as being able to put food on the table. Now you can listen and subscribe to Real Agenda Radio through Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google, and all good podcast providers. Here at Real Agenda Radio, we want to see a more compassionate and just society, as well as more courageous politicians prepared to do the right thing for people over party. But it's not happening. But it can. It's urgent, and it's up to us to make it happen. So Real Agenda Radio seeks to be a news and information media channel to help spread the word, to encourage those who are campaigning and also convince the many that change is possible. So let's find out more. Coming soon on Real Agenda Radio is an episode featuring the Patriotic Millionaires who want to see a tax on extreme wealth. And I talked to James Perry, the co-chair of Cook, the handmade frozen meal specialist. And he's also co-founder of B Corp UK and a board member of the Patriotic Millionaires. And he talks about how there is a huge untapped resource that could be used to fund public services, and unlike other tax proposals, would cause no hardship. So watch out for that. It's coming soon on Real Agenda Radio. Now, on the theme of wealth, I read an interview in the Times, or read an interview in the Times, with John Caudwell, who in 2006 saw 1.6 billion drop into his current account as he sold his company, Phones for You. And in this interview, he made a few comments about a few things, in fact. And here's some of them. He says, wealth has given me yachts, cars, great meals and holidays, but nothing, he says, nothing touches me like kids fighting against the odds to have a decent life. And 4 years ago, Caudwell increased his giveaway pledge to 70%. I just wasn't doing enough, he says. I mean, what use is that money to me? If I give 100 million to my children, will it make them happy? No, it'll just land them with problems. And he also said that he tries to get to people to boycott Apple, Google and Amazon. And he says what they do to avoid paying tax is awful. It's dreadful and disgusting because they're stopping sick children or people in desperate financial need from being looked after. What can we do? He does suggest that corporation tax fixed at 15% globally. Now, during the pandemic, Caudwell was stuck in his Monaco home for 9 months. Now, he could have legitimately paid tax locally at 0%, but he said he paid full UK tax. He says, I know wealthy friends who think I'm the world's biggest mug, but I see it differently. I look forward to a time when they are the ones who feel silly. Not paying tax is morally abhorrent. Certainly agree there. And he said, money used to be everything, but it doesn't make you happy. Happiness is love, family, doing good. That's everything. Money isn't. So there you go. Yes, it's not all about the money, but we do need enough to have the basics and the opportunity for a happy and fulfilled life. There is a common thread that unites many campaigning groups that you hear about on Network News, and that is compassion, the sympathy and concern for the suffering and misfortune of others. Now, there are moves afoot to create a compassion coalition to bring together individuals and campaigning groups to develop a strong, unified campaign to create a more compassionate and just society. The organisations that are being invited to join have a collective following of over 2 million. Now, the group behind this initiative is Compassion in Politics, and they've asked Tom Burgess, that's me, to drive this initiative. So I better get on with it. Now, more on this soon. You can find out more at compassioninpolitics.com. Now, there's a piece in The Guardian on the 6th of August all about a new campaign from Compass that is hoping to raise £1 million to bring more supporters of electoral reform to the Commons at the next general election. The group, called Win as One, will work with candidates from progressive parties who are well placed to beat the Conservatives and are in the support of proportional representation. Now, the project's aim is to urge candidates from Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens in England and Wales to sign up to support PR, that's proportional representation, and to coordinate more closely. Now, the group says that with the Labour leadership sceptical about electoral reform and having ruled out any agreement with the Liberal Democrats ahead of a general election, the Win and One campaign is described as in a presentation which the Guardian saw as a citizens' pitch invasion to change the government and the political system. Compass says, instead of waiting for party leaders who may be too cautious to do what's needed, we will build a national and local movement based on the strengths we already have, our activism, our voices and our votes. Win as One hopes to channel resources and activists to support reform-minded candidates from any progressive party, and more controversially to help broker agreements about which party is more likely to win and where, what was previously called a progressive alliance. Now, candidates would be asked to sign up to a pledge supporting electoral reform. The campaign would then aim to help support a caucus of pro-PR MPs in the House of Commons who would work together to press for change. Now, the group aims to encourage dialogue between activists of the different progressive parties at a local level, which can be a challenging task where tribal loyalties run deep. You can find out more at compassiononline.org.uk. Now, a group called Larger Us has brought out a new guide for people who want to help bring about positive change in the world by bringing people together, not dividing them. Now, Larger Us describes itself as a community of change makers who share the aim of bridging divides rather than deepening them. And they want to transform relationships rather than defeat enemies, and who recognise that achieving these things is about psychology as much as politics. And the new guide addresses 5 questions that can have a pivotal impact on whether we and the people we communicate with fragment into a them and us or come together as a larger us. Those questions are: how do we build belonging? How do we bridge divides? How can we appeal to love, not fear, especially when we feel threatened? How can we help people navigate loss and trauma? And how can we tell stories that bring people together? Now, you can check this out on larger.us. There is a larger.us podcast series also. The episode issued on the 27th of June says more about the guide and how to build a larger us, and it features the founder, Alex Evans. In other news, Fred Harrison, the author and economist and recognised accurate predictor of economic crashes, has recorded a podcast on the corruption of economics for the Shepherd Waldwin podcast series, which you can hear shortly on Real Agenda Radio. In this interview, he talks about The Corruption of Economics, a book that he wrote with the late Professor Mason Gaffney, with an additional contribution from Dr. Chris Fedder. Corruption was released in 1994, but as part of the focus on the classics in the Shepherd Waldwin Library, it is being re-released as an ebook with a new introduction from Fred. And of course, Fred Harrison is a board member of Taxpayers Against Poverty, which I also chair, and he's a good friend of this podcast, and we've had episodes featuring Fred on before, so do listen to this one again. He talks a lot of sense. I'm very grateful to my friend Susan Paxton, who posted the following piece on Facebook, which seems to have been doing the rounds. And this is what it says. So this says, well, after the recent announcement from the Bank of England, there's something very, very wrong with the system. So let me get this straight. British Gas made a profit of $1.3 billion between January and June. BP announced profits of $6.95 billion between April and June alone. And Shell has profited by $9.4 billion in a year. And the men at the top, John Pettigrew, boss of National Grid, received a $6.5 million bonus on top of his salary. Chris O'Shea, the chief executive of British gas owner Centrica, was paid almost $2 million last year in profit, salary and benefits. Centrica's non-executive directors were paid almost $1 million. Scottish Power's CEO Keith Anderson is on $1.15 million. E.ON boss Michael Lewis on $1 million. EDF's Simone Rossi is also on $1 million, and their top execs enjoyed a share of $4.6 million. Peter Simpson of Anglian Water earned $1.3 million pay package. Welsh Water bosses awarded themselves bonuses of $930,000. Severn Trent bosses awarded themselves bonuses of $5.56 million. Thames Water's Sarah Bentley received $727,000 bonus on top of her $2 million annual salary. Meanwhile, there are people who haven't had breakfast or lunch today because they can't afford it. There are people using food banks because food is becoming more of a luxury than a necessity. There are children celebrating birthdays with no present. Parents worrying about new school uniforms, and some schools enforcing rules which are not cost effective. Some people who can't get to work because they can't afford to put petrol in their cars or pay for public transport anymore. There are people working so much that they're making themselves ill, and they still can't afford to pay their bills. And there are people who have been given fines by the same energy and water companies because they can't afford to pay their bills in the first place. And that's increasing their debt. And now we've got hosepipe bans when gallons of water leak away every day. And elderly people are not drinking because they're worried about running out of water. All this and energy prices are set to rise to 75% in October. The Post continues, "This is madness. I'm all for supporting profits. I'm not for supporting greed at cost of lives of others. Something's got to change. Why is customers' money being used to make life more comfortable for those who are making life more intolerable for the rest of us? I actually don't understand how the energy companies are allowed to get away with this and why the government aren't stopping them instead of handing out money." So that's not my words. That comes from a Facebook post which was posted by Susan. So thanks very much, Susan. I know it is indeed confusion. I suppose the good news is that change is possible if we work together. Then we'll all be better off, not just the fortunate few. But what's described above is urgent. People are suffering, there's great hardship, and we need action now. So what do you think? Contact us on info@realagendaradio.org or on Twitter @realagendanet or via our website realagenda.org. We'd love to hear your views. If you'd like a copy of my book, From Here to Prosperity, a new political agenda for sustainable economy and greater social justice, go to FromHereToProsperity.org. You can also follow me, Tom Burgess, on Instagram at TomBurgess2709, where I post information related to Real Agenda Radio and the campaigning work I'm involved with. You can read a transcript of this show with links to the organisations we mentioned on our website, realagendaradio.org. You can listen and subscribe free to Real Agenda Radio on Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Google and Spotify, and more. Listen out for the next bulletin where we bring you more news from those working hard to change our outdated and unrepresented political system that is failing to serve our country well. We hope you want to get involved. We know that we can achieve change if we work together. So that's what we're doing on Real Agenda Radio. The campaign groups and think tanks, which podcasts we distribute, has a collective online following of over 1 million. Our challenge is to make sure they all listen to Real Agenda Radio. Recent shows have included It's Bloody Complicated from Compass, podcasts from the Shepherd Walwyn, the publishers of the Ethical Economics series of books, and Across the Benches from Compassion in Politics. A special thanks to our sponsors, Switch, the workstation for your browser. Do you find yourself with too many tabs open and losing your place? Try switchextension.com. It's free to download. Save yourself time. I do, and it's great. Now, one thing is certain. People want to see change to a more compassionate and just society, as well as more courageous politicians prepared to do the right thing for people over party. It's not happening, but it can. And it's very urgent. It's up to us to make it happen. Because that's the real agenda. I'm Tom Burgess. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.